You get up. You answer what has to be answered. You show up where you're expected. You do the normal things well enough that most people would never think to ask whether something deeper is wrong. From the outside, your life may still look functional. You are still moving, still replying, still handling things, still getting through the day in ways that make your exhaustion hard to detect. That is what makes quiet burnout so easy to miss. It does not always look like collapse. It does not always announce itself with tears, panic, or dramatic failure. Sometimes it looks almost ordinary. You still go to work, still pay bills, still hold conversations, still make decisions, but something in you has started thinning out. Not your schedule, not your responsibilities. You. That is the strange part. You do not necessarily stop functioning. You just stop arriving fully. You become harder to reach from the inside. A lot of adults think burnout has to look obvious to count. They imagine breakdown, not erosion. They expect some visible moment where the strain finally becomes undeniable. But quiet burnout often works differently. It is slower, less theatrical, more private. It does not explode. It narrows. Your emotional range gets smaller. Your patience gets shorter. Your interest becomes harder to access. You still do what needs to be done, but more and more of you is missing from the experience. That is why quiet burnout can go on for a long time. It hides inside responsibility. It hides inside competence. It hides inside phrases like, "I'm just tired," "It's been a busy week," or "I've had a lot on my mind lately." And sometimes those phrases are true, but sometimes they are covering something deeper. Not just fatigue, but depletion. Not just stress, but inner withdrawal. You may notice it first in the way small things start feeling heavier than they should. Simple decisions take too much effort. Messages sit unanswered because even minor interaction feels like friction. You come home and do not want more stimulation, more conversation, or more demands. You do not want excitement. You want non-access. That is one of the clearest signs. At a certain point, burnout stops feeling like "I need a break" and starts feeling like "I do not want anything touching me right now," not because you are dramatic, because your system has run out of room. And when that happens, even normal life can start feeling invasive. A call, a question, a favor, a conversation that would have felt manageable a few months ago now feels like one more thing entering a space that already has no capacity left. That is when people start misunderstanding you. They see less enthusiasm, less warmth, less availability, and assume you have changed. Maybe you seem cold, maybe you seem distant, maybe you seem lazy, withdrawn, or harder to connect with. But what they are often looking at is not indifference, it is compression. Burnout compresses a person. It makes everything narrower. You stop reaching outward as much because even holding yourself together is already using most of what you have. This is part of why quiet burnout can damage your relationships without anyone understanding why. Other people feel your reduced presence, but they do not feel the internal cost behind it. They just notice that you are less responsive, less animated, less interested, less emotionally available. And because you are still functioning on the surface, they may not realize that even basic participation has started costing you more than it should. The harder part is that you may not fully realize it either. Because quiet burnout does not always feel dramatic enough to justify concern. You tell yourself you are being weak, or lazy, or oversensitive. You think maybe you just need to push through, get more disciplined, be less negative. But the more depleted you get, the less expressive you may become, not because you are coping well, because even being visible starts to feel like work. That is where a lot of people get stuck. They are not fully okay, but they are not falling apart in an obvious way either, so they keep going. And over time, the cost becomes psychological. You stop asking what you feel and start organizing yourself around what is required. You become efficient on the outside and expensive on the inside. The days get handled, but not inhabited. You are present in your life, but only in the technical sense. Tasks get done, conversations happen, deadlines get met, But inwardly, something has gone quiet in the wrong way. Not peaceful quiet, absent quiet. You stop looking forward to things, not because nothing good exists, because anticipation requires energy you no longer have. You stop feeling genuine relief from the things that used to help. Rest becomes passive instead of restorative. You scroll, you watch, you disappear into low-effort distractions. A lot of tired people are not actually resting, they are consuming. They are using stimulation to avoid collapse without ever truly recovering from what is draining them. That is one reason quiet burnout can last so long. It gets mistaken for ordinary tiredness, while your actual life force slowly withdraws behind routine. And this does not only come from work. Sometimes the cause is bigger and more total than that. Life burnout, emotional overfunctioning, long periods of caring too much without enough release, being the dependable one, the calm one, the one who absorbs pressure without making it more obvious for everyone else, the one who keeps adapting, keeps handling it, keeps staying reasonable. From the outside, that can look mature. From the inside, it can feel like self-erasure. Because every time you override your limits without naming them, your system records it. Every time you keep going without enough recovery, something in you learns that your inner state is less important than your output. And eventually, even if nobody is directly forcing you, you begin doing the job for them. You stop checking whether something is sustainable. You only check whether it is possible. That mindset is dangerous. Because a lot of things are possible right up until the moment they are not. Quiet burnout often grows in adults who are high-functioning enough to betray themselves efficiently. They know how to keep the machine running. They know how to suppress, delay, compartmentalize, and continue. They are not reckless. They are capable. And that is exactly why the problem gets missed. Capability can hide suffering for a very long time, until one day you notice that even small joys are not landing. You are not fully sad, not fully hopeless, just flat in a way that feels hard to explain. You laugh less naturally, you feel more easily irritated, you need more silence than usual, you begin avoiding things you once tolerated without much thought. And maybe the worst part is that your life still looks normal enough that you feel guilty for struggling. That guilt makes everything worse, because now you are not only depleted, you are also ashamed of being depleted. You tell yourself other people have it harder, that you should be grateful, that nothing is objectively wrong enough to justify how disconnected you feel. But burnout does not always wait for your life to become disastrous. Sometimes it grows simply because the pace, pressure, and inner cost of your life have stayed misaligned for too long. That matters, because once you understand quiet burnout properly, the goal changes. The goal is not to shame yourself into better performance. It is not to romanticize disappearing either. It is to become accurate, to notice where your energy is actually going, to admit what no longer restores you, to see the difference between entertainment and recovery, to notice how often you say, "I'm fine," when what you really mean is, "I can still function." Those are not the same sentence, and that difference can save you, because the earlier you catch quiet burnout, the less it has to take before you listen. You do not need to wait until your body forces the issue. You do not need a dramatic breakdown to earn the right to take your depletion seriously. If your inner life has been narrowing for months, that already matters. If everything feels heavier, flatter, duller, and harder to access, that already matters. Sometimes the most important shift is simply refusing to call chronic depletion normal just because you have become good at carrying it. That does not mean every tired season is burnout. But it does mean you should pay attention when your exhaustion starts changing your personality, when your world becomes smaller, when your emotional range becomes thinner, when rest stops restoring you, when other people start feeling like pressure, when joy starts feeling farther away than it used to. Those are not random moods, they are information, and the deepest truth under quiet burnout is usually not, "I am failing." It is something more honest. I have been carrying too much for too long without enough real recovery, and now my inner life is no longer cooperating with the pace that emptied it. That is the sentence worth listening to, because it leads somewhere real. Not toward self-hatred, not toward performance for its own sake, toward better boundaries, toward less hidden overextension, toward a life that costs less to inhabit. If this felt familiar, tell me in the comments what quiet burnout looks like for you most lately. Numbness, brain fog, irritation, losing interest, or just functioning without really feeling there. And if you want more calm, honest breakdowns of the patterns people carry quietly for years, subscribe.